Hey everybody, MrAyrit here. Welcome back to the channel. I've got Sine Craft with me again for another kind of episode here. We're going to today discuss our top picks for headphones in several different price categories. So we thought this would be good to do just to have a conversation about it because we're not sure what each other's picks are and we don't know if they'll be the same, if they'll be different. And so we'll kind of just throw our picks out there for the different categories and then discuss from there. I guess we'll see if we land on the same thing or something else.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
We picked, well, I guess we picked five, right? We did under 100, under 200, under 300, under 500, and under a cool grand. And I think we agreed to sort of hold ourselves to one for each category, but we may have some honorable mentions. There may be a few.
Sure. So, I mean, one thing we need to discuss is how you picked yours. So just for me, I picked, like, these are just going to be my favorites, right? Like if this is my money, these are the picks that I'm picking for me. So it's not necessarily like the headphones that I would recommend to everybody in these categories. They're just the ones that I like the best because I feel like you could go on and on depending on people's needs about what would be best or what's most versatile or things like that. So the only way I could get myself to actually pick is just to pick the one that I wanted.
Yeah. I'm pretty much in the same boat. Like you said, if a friend came to me and said, like, what should I get? I got $200. I'd be like, well, how are you going to use it? And what kind of thing are you going to drive it with and all that? And yeah, it's super personal. Like, are you portable in an office by yourself?
Right. Music only, gaming, movies. I mean, there's so many different aspects to it. So, I mean, we'll go into why we picked ours and what we think they're good for. I assume, I mean, that's kind of my plan. And then, like I said, maybe we'll toss out a couple of other ideas that we're kicking around in our heads when we were coming up with them.
Sounds good. All right.
And we're going to do reveals too. So we've got cards and so we can't change them, right? That's right.
It's
not a setup.
Right. This is
it.
And we've not discussed this.
So anything else before we jump into our under $100 pick?
No, let's do it. Let's build from the bottom up.
You ready? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Like, what do we do? Just go? We don't need to
1, 2, 3
countdown or anything, do we?
No. All right. 1, 2, 3. Oh, is this on screen?
You got it. You're okay. All so right. You picked the 80E or X, whatever they can get.
I'll tell you. Well, so I think I'll say I picked things that I like. I picked things that were important to me in how I've come to the hobby, like important stepping stone headphones that have like really woken me up to new stuff at each point in my spend and my listening. And so I picked the Grottos, tomatoes, because I feel like this was a headphone that, like, when I heard it, I was just like, what am I listening to? Like, it was so different than all the, like, this and that, Sony Audio-Technica kind of stuff I bought at Best Buy and kind of not kind of audiophile gear. It's so, like, different and interesting and dynamic that I was, like, kind of woken up to, like, oh, this is how these things can sound.
Things can sound different.
Yeah, so I think that's why I picked them, and I went to just double check because I was like, I think they were like $80 or $100, and I went to confirm, and they're no longer made. The SR80E is discontinued, replaced by the X. The X has snuck up to be $125. So I'm technically cheating a little bit here already.
A little bit. Well, we already did our video, right, about why we buy used and how we buy used and things like that. So check that out if you want. But I mean, I'm kind of also basing this on like the prices I bought them at. So
sneaky. All right.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, sneaky. Yeah. So I did have the 80Es at one point in time, and I thought they were a unique headphone. Like, ultimately, I didn't feel like they really meshed into my system or setups at the time, but I definitely think they're worth a look for sure in that price range. Have you heard the X's? Are they this, or is there like a consensus? Are they the same?
I haven't heard them. I haven't heard them. I suspect they're in theory, like slightly newer driver tech, but Grotto is not a technology company. No. So I suspect they're like probably 98% the same.
Yeah.
And hopefully just a smidge better.
Yeah.
Hopefully
just a smidge
better. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I went 9,600, shipped 9,600s. So I picked that headphone, and I do think, like, in this category, this is one that I would probably recommend to most people as far as just, like, a headphone to get to use if you're gonna just, like, you need a headphone that you can toss in your bag and beat up, and you're gonna do everything with it, and maybe you don't have anything to drive it, or you're just going straight out of any sort of device or any of that. I just think it's a good, well-rounded, easy to listen to headphone at that price that it's a headphone that I enjoy listening to. Like, it's kind of like my work headphone, background music. Nothing offends me about it. I feel like you get some sound stage, you get some imaging to play with, so you can game with it, you can watch movies in it. So I just think it's a good all-around headphone that's comfortable. I like the build. Yeah, I mean that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah.
I liked it way more than the 9500s. Those were a little sharp to me, a little they just didn't quite come together for me, and I actually like those better too, the 9600s, than the X2HR as well, which I thought was just a little bit too V for me. And the 96s are just a little bit
You like
more
a
chilled
mild
out.
V, not a strong V?
Yeah, I like a mild V. I'm not a major V type of a guy.
The other thing I thought about kind of putting up was the Sony Nbr 7506, which is like the classic studio headphone from like 90, 91, something like that, still in production, I think unchanged. The reason I would put those on the list is, again, is sort of like a wake up moment for me. Those are like headphones, like they're very unforgiving. I can't necessarily recommend them whole cloth because their job is to like pull detail, just bring everything so you can engineer against them, just hear anything that's in the track. And that's not always enjoyable by any means, but it's sort of the opposite end of the Grados, right? It's like they're drunk. Those headphones are just like having a ball. They're just
belligerent.
They're just doing whatever they want to do. Whereas on the other end, the Sonys are like, purists. They're very serious. They're and there's sort of this reference headphone that I think, again, it's like a moment where if you want a headphone, neither one of these, what I say, are like good all day, all around headphones. But if you want a headphone that's going to like teach you something about what's happening in the track and like open your brain up to like a new way of listening, both of those, I think, for that $100 price point are hard to beat.
I would say too, a couple more thoughts about this price point. I have two other thoughts. One thought is, don't, like, in my mind, like, this isn't a price range that you like belabor the decision about, right? This is like a get your foot in the door, find out if you like something or don't like something, and then you can move based on that to where you want to go from there. That's kind of how I think about it. The other way I was thinking about it is, like, honestly, I feel like the next price category, the $100 to $200 range, has so much to offer that I would almost, in my head, I was almost going like, just tell people to save a little bit more and wait and get something in that category. I don't know how you feel about
I think that's actually super fair feedback, right? If you are genuinely interested in this stuff and you want to hear things that are a bit sort of more special and interesting, it's tough to do that in that first $100 spend. If you can put a few more dollars together, get yourself into that 140, 150, 160 territory, I think a lot of stuff opens up.
Especially if you're buying on the used market, there is a lot of stuff in the under 200, like lots and lots and lots of stuff. So,
all right.
So let's get into it, because I thought this was I don't know how you felt, but this was my most difficult category. I mean, it's probably also because this is where I've heard the most headphones, I think, or most headphones that I liked anyway, right? So a lot of the stuff under $100, not a big fan of. Haven't heard tons and tons of things, over the $200 price point. I mean, several at this point, but like, if we're talking when we get up to the $1,000 category, I've heard, half a dozen headphones in that price range, right? So I just don't have the depth of experience. So this one was tough for me. So I have a lot of other suggestions here, but let's see what we've got. So
okay, 1, 2, 3. Woo. There you go.
So you got the 880 600 ohm. Are
Yeah,
you hard on the 600? It's got to be the 600.
it's got to be. Well, we can
Got
talk about it. And you went Nighthawk.
Yeah, Nighthawk. I love them. I do. I love them. These
are they still in production?
No,
Okay,
definitely
so
not.
this is only a used option.
This is only a used option, and I would caveat this too with it's only the OG Nighthawks with their original pads.
Okay.
I had
Did you do a video recently on these?
I
feel
did.
like I
So
saw
the
that
ones
come
I
across
got
my
were
feed.
just I bought mine for $150, but they were really beat up and kind of gross. So like it took some work, and probably I have more than $200 into them at this point because I bought like a brand new set of pads and just stuff like that. So but I had the carbons too for a little bit because I was like, oh, these, I really like these OG ones, but they're so dirty, and I caught a good deal on some carbons, which I also got for less than 200, but they just didn't sound as good. I think it's the pads more than the driver, but
Yeah.
again, you can't buy the pads either. So, I mean, I'll probably do a pad rolling video at some point and play around with it a little bit to see
Yeah.
if I could do it. But I definitely think as far as like interesting headphones, like they are it. They have they don't image great, but they have a pretty big, interesting sound stage with good separation. They've got like a really nice impact in the bass, and it's a biocellulose driver, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
are kind of known for that just like thick texture bass, but I don't ever feel like it's like too crazy though. And it's also it kind of again I think falls into that kind of mild V category. And just it's just an interesting headphone, and I just like listening to it, it engages me regardless of what I plug it into, and it's just another headphone that I get into easily.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I just like listening to it. Is like kind of that's the whole criteria right there. It's like we
Yeah.
can analyze the crap out of these things, but like I enjoy it. I go back to it. Like that. Those are the kind of things that tell you you're like barking up the right tree for your personal taste, right?
Well, and I think too for me it's like the headphones I like the most are the ones that I just listen to. Like I'm not sitting there like analytical, like, oh, what was that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that sound right? Is that wrong? Like the headphones that are on my list here, they're just headphones that I put on. I'm like, just starting, I just forget everything else and just enjoy.
Yeah. So the DT880s, I had a 250 ohm. Again, this is like a headphone early on for me that woke me up to like what was possible. It was all about sort of clarity and separation and a ton of like detail in the treble region, which was like kind of like that's something I don't think you start to get until higher end headphones, right? It's
Yeah.
like, bass can be very sloppy in cheaper headphones, but it's like treble's just like what it's like a blanket. It's like you don't even decipher it. You don't take it apart and like hear little bits of it. It's just kind of a thing. So I think like very dynamic, pretty well known for that, right? It's like their upper mids, their treble is like always on point, and their space and their separation is always really good. They can be kind of a thin brand in my experience, like that they're not. If you're like I like mid bass, I like the lower end of the mid range. Like I like a weighty sound. I normally don't steer people towards that brand because I feel like that's not really what they're going for. But the 600 ohm properly driven, and it does take some power to drive them. Like they sound awesome across the range, and they sound like really expensive headphones. They are sort of comparable in their capability to much more expensive things, and I think that's why they're exciting. And I go back to them.
Do you run them on tubes? So when I had them, I thought they were good. I mean, I agree with everything that you said. Ultimately, they didn't like engage me at the level like some, I just didn't connect with them emotionally, but I thought technically, it was all there. But I had an Asgard 3 at the time was my amp, and I know they like tubes, or I've heard, but I didn't have anything to play with at that time. I mean, I saw some pretty wicked looking tubes behind you there. So I don't know. Do you still have the 880s or
I don't
are
have
they?
the 880s anymore because everything has to go
Yep.
eventually. I kind of don't let myself be too much of a collector, but and I kind of regret because I actually had them modded to be balanced with 3.5
Yep.
connects on both sides, and that was really nice because then I could run a nice aftermarket XLR terminated cable, which then gives you a lot of drive options. It's not that you can't find amps that terminate in a 1/4 inch that are powerful, but it's less common. You have a lot of options once you have a 4-pin connect out, and if they're actually balanced, you can kind of take the benefit of it. I ran them on a lot of things. They really liked a big, thick power source. So like Chit Molyneux, like 8 watts, right? Bigger tube amps, speaker amps, like they will take you. You need to feed them. You need to feed the beast. And a lot of, I think this is like a thing with those and the HE6 and the like things like this as far, like all these headphones that you hear are like super hard to drive. It's like it's not that you can't hear them or they don't get loud enough on other amps. It's that you just aren't hearing what these headphones do.
Yeah,
And
they're
once
not.
you give them,
Yeah, they just, well, that's my experience with like the HE6 is like, I mean, it was okay on like some amps, but it's just you got to find the right one to make it special, though. Like to get it there. So that, I mean, I think the DT880, that is that an example of like, for me, that would be one that I'd probably, at least the 600 ohm, right, would not probably recommend a lot of people just because of like what we're talking about here, that you really got to have your chain in order to make it do what it can do.
You really do. I think that the 250 is pretty great and much easier to live with. Honestly, my other pick for this, which I flip flopped a few times before I wrote it down on the card, was the Hifiman HE400i, which I think now they've stopped selling in the US. They had a 2020 edition, and I think now it's only available in Europe, but you can get the SE 400 SE, I guess they're calling it.
That's this one right here.
Boom.
Yeah.
Nice. I haven't seen the silver colorways there. That's nice. Well, so you got it on your head. What do you think?
Yeah, it was a contender. It was either this or the Nighthawks. To be perfectly honest though, like this headphone, if you're looking on the used market, like you could probably get it in the under 100 category if you were lucky, right? Like I bought these for 110 open box Amazon.
Yeah.
So I mean they're down there, and these are, again, I think if you're looking for like a great entry point into like what else is there besides just like the straight consumer sound or the traditional consumer sound, I feel like these would be a great place to start. And this is probably a headphone where, again, if you were gonna buy something like the 9600s or a Grado 80X, if it were me, I'd probably like spend the extra $30 and get these.
I would too. I had those. I loved them. I mean, the original 400i from whatever 8 years ago. I had them. I loved them. I was like, they were first planar. I was like, oh my god, planars are amazing. They have all this. They feel so relaxed and easy, yet they bring out all this detail and all this like weight and interest. And yeah, I think that's a headphone that you go, oh wow, like it's another one of those like oh wow moments if you haven't heard a lot of stuff.
And it's a headphone, and I feel like the headphone, if you find the right headphone in this category for you, it's kind of like you do second guess owning more expensive stuff, like you're kind of like, do I really need that, other stuff? Do I really need $1,000 headphone, or can I just be happy with these, right? Like those are the thoughts I have anyway when I'm listening. If I'm grooving to the Nighthawks, or if I got these on and I'm and I'm into them, I start to second guess myself about like whether I need all this stuff or not. Ultimately,
you should. So like let's just end the video there. Just buy the HE400i or SE or whatever it is now, and like a nice $100 amp, just because you get a smidge more out of them, and just call it a day. Like we don't even need to go up there.
Well,
but we will. We will
go
we can't
on.
Help ourselves.
We can't, and it's really a problem. So yeah, maybe get out now if you're not already in. But
yeah. No, I
Let me
agree.
see
I
if I
think
have
those are
uh,
awesome.
I'll toss out. I'm just gonna toss out a couple other quick ones. We don't have to debate them long or anything like that. But M1060s, I really like M1060s. Those were my first planar headphone, and I feel like I've kind of evolved from that sound at this point, but I feel like it's a great entry and that's another easy headphone to like and to just enjoy. Um, Plus bonus for wood cups because I love them personally, and then the 560S, the Sennheiser 560S, I think is another strong contender, which again, if you're looking in the used market, like 120, 130 bucks now, I think that and these are kind of like good, neutral, cheaper headphones that do a lot for the money, I think.
Nice. Agreed. Good call outs.
Cool. Anything else? Moving up.
Let's move up.
Okay, $200 to $300. This was a heated one for me.
Yeah.
Ready?
This is not for me.
Argons?
Oh yeah.
All right, I'm going HE 560. So another hi-fi man. I'm gonna sound like a hi-fi man fanboy by the end of this video. Just so
you know what? I am a hi-fi man fanboy, unapologetically. So preach.
All right. Well, I want to hear your thoughts on Argon first, because I think that's an interesting pick.
Yeah. So I think you'll see in a lot of these, like, I'm not picking the sort of middle of the road mainstream things. I'm picking things that are more extreme, that push the boundaries, because that's what I like. In this racket, in this audiophile racket, is like finding a new thing, hearing something in a fresh light, and being like, "Ooh, I like that. I want more," or "No, that's not for me," or "I'm going to learn something from that, and I'm going to take it and combine it with something else I like, and keeping my way down the path." So for me, each set of headphones is sort of a point to learn about what I like and how my head works and get my brain a little reprogrammed. And I think the Argons were one of those headphones that, well, one, I also just love. I love a good backstory. I love a headphone with a backstory, and all the T50 RP mods are so cool, and there's so many vendors out there doing really cool stuff. But I think the mod house stuff is like kind of standing the test of time a bit more. Still very much in demand, still very much in production. Whereas I feel like
like 6 weeks to a couple of months out to get one. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
last time I checked,
got real bad for a while, I think, during COVID, because like the supply of the actual units, the donor units, was kind of backed up, so he was kind of hamstrung for a bit. But
well, and I really like his like business model too. I think Ryan, is it Ryan, right?
I think it's Ryan. Yep.
I think, but it's like he doesn't gouge you on like if he sells them to you either. You know what I mean? Like, he's just like, this is my fee for doing it. He's like, I can buy them and do it and send them to you, or you can send me yours and I'll just do it.
Yep.
Which I like. I just feel like it's just like honest work, and it's not unreasonable, right? It's like, I don't know how many hours it takes him to do that, but like it's got to be he's got to have a few in it, right? Plus the research and the time playing with it and all that. So I just think it's cool. I think it's cool that somebody's been able to like make a business out of that.
Yeah, and I think it's a side hustle for sure, and it's something he's passionate about. I'm sure it doesn't pay all his bills, but I appreciate that, and I also like that he picks his battles. Right, he's like, if you want different pads, which I do recommend, they're coming from ZMF. If you want, a different cable, it's coming from Peria. Like, he's not trying to do everything. He's like, this is what I do. It's like, I make these things do cool things that they didn't do from the factory. And then I think there's all this like ecosystem around it that can make them even better. And you know what? That's not my jam, but I got some great partners. So yeah. I love the approach.
And it's quality stuff, right? Like, it's not like he's just trying to upsell you or anything. It's like, this is what you need if you want it to be like what it can be.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I recommend. So yeah, I appreciate that too. Did you ever mod T50s? You doing?
I never did. No.
Did you? That was probably the longest set of headphones I owned. So I kind of modded a set of T50s, and I kind of like was able to actually like slip out of like the hedonic treadmill of headphones for a while. And then for whatever reason, I traded them for M50Xs of all things. And then yeah, I've kind of been regretting it ever since, I guess.
Well, if anyone's watching this and they're not familiar with the stuff, just search Mod House and Argon, and you'll find his stuff. But I think that the character of these headphones, which is notable, is their bass. Their bass is pretty incredible, and if you are a bass head on a budget, they're kind of a fantastic option. Not that like $300 is a budget necessarily, but they're still a little spendy. But I think that's not their whole story. Like I was like, when I got them, I expected like, oh, this is gonna have some killer bass. It's gonna be really fun, great to listen to hip hop and stuff. And then I was like totally blown away by how much detail and texture they actually had throughout the range. And like for a closed back, they've got a pretty good sound stage. They've got a pretty good sense of space about them.
It's a big sounding headphone.
It is a big sounding headphone. And if you go with like the cowhide instead of the, I forget the ones he sort of recommends for the classic Mod House sound. You can actually get a headphone that's pretty darn balanced and sort of tunes the bass down a little bit, brings up the mid range, because they are super V out of the box.
Yep.
Anyway, I think they're a really unique, cool thing that sounds super interesting. And there's not a lot for me in that price range that's like pushes a boundary like that so successfully.
I feel like that's a big gap in the market. Like that, like under $500 close back, that's more, more than just like the $100 stuff. Like in between a DT770 and like Allegia's, and there's like this void where there's like a handful of headphones that fit in there. I think if I was a headphone manufacturer, I think that'd be a market that I would be like trying to zero in on. But I guess, I mean, maybe that's where all the noise canceling stuff comes in though, right? Like that's where like all the Sonys and the Bose and all that stuff. So maybe they just figure that market's a hard one to corner. I don't know. It seems like there's a lack of options in there for closed back.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think once you crest into like the 5 to 6, there start to be a bunch more players, right? You've got Odyssey's closed back, you've got Dan Clark Audio, you got a handful more, but yeah, I mean there's not a lot right there. There's not a lot right there between like the cheaper under $200 stuff and the like, 3 to 2 to 500, I guess, price stuff. Yeah.
So HE560 is mine, and I did a review on this not too long ago, and this was a headphone. I can't even remember what made me buy it, to be honest with you. It was like an open box from Hifiman or something like that, and I was just like, oh, a couple $100, I'll try it. But that's kind of like, that's the headphone that's kind of set me down this Hifiman path. So I bought that, and then I bought the Edition XX, and then because I wanted to try the big Hifiman. Then I bought the HE6, and then I bought these. So it's like, I'm kind of like, I wanted to, the whole range I was kind of trying to like flesh out. I still need to get kind of above that $1,000 mark in the Hifiman stuff. But I was just so impressed by the 560s, like clean. It's just super clean without like lacking anything or without coming off too sharp. It gains it's just amazing imaging. Like with that headphone, it's just so clean. It has such a great sound stage with it. It's maybe not like if it was just strictly music, I don't know that that'd be the one that I would gravitate towards. It's definitely, I feel like, a more analytical listen when it comes to music, but I still enjoyed it. Like it didn't ever turn me off, but it just as an all around everyday use headphone that just lives at my like home theater setup. So for movies and gaming and sitting on the couch listening to music, like that headphone just does it all for me. And I've been just really pleased with it. And that's probably one too that could almost go in the category below, because I think on sale for like $229, I think, like I said, open box, I may have even paid less than $200. It was right around there. But I really like that headphone, and I don't feel like I see very many people talking about it or recommending it. And I feel like it's a great all-arounder personally.
Yeah. Well, I think it's in a weird price category because you've got, the
Anondas,
you've got 6XX, you've got the, what is it? The, starts with an S.
Sundara.
Sundara, thank you. Right,
Yeah.
which is everyone's darling right now. So it's got a lot of. It's kind of a crowded part within within its own range of products.
Well, yeah.
And
I
I
mean,
think,
certainly if you're going for like the most recommended, you're probably either buying a 6XS or a Sundara if you're spending $200 to $300. I mean, that's
yeah,
kind of across the board. I I like the 560 better than both of those headphones easily. I'm not a 6XS fan, and I had the Sundara for a while, and I thought it was decent, but I don't know, it just didn't ever like grip me, you know?
yeah. That's good. That's a hot take right here, folks. You heard it here. No, I think that's great, and I think that there is that. There's like the named series and the number series within the hi-fi Hifiman line, and I don't know how intentional that is, but I feel like the numbered series are some of my favorites. They're like these cool moment. Like the six is like, that's such a wild headphone. It's so crazy that it exists, and it's such an interesting. And I haven't heard the 560, but it's on my short list for sure because I'm, as I said, a Hifiman fanboy, and I kind of want to hear it all before I die.
Well, I tell you what, I've got them. I loaned them to somebody else here for a little bit, but when I get them back, I can send them your way.
All right, sounds good. I'll hold you to it.
Runner-ups, mine's 660S, if you can get it under 300, which I think you can. Like I did previously, like 275 I see on the used market, maybe 300 open box if you're lucky. But I feel like that of all the Sennheisers, that's been my favorite so far.
Yeah,
Is that one. So I think that's a strong competitor in this price range for, again, kind of a great do-it-all headphone.
yeah. I've got on right on right now. 650s. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, no real runners up for me. That's one I feel like
That's clean for you.
I love it. It's interesting, and I'd recommend it. It's clean for me. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Clean win. Good. Okay. So next up, under 500.
All right.
Now we're starting to get into some serious
We're spending
stuff
some money.
here.
We're spending some money. Eating
All right,
into
here
the
you go.
college kids fund for sure. Oh yeah. What you got there? Oh, Edition XX. Nice.
Edition XX, and you got the, is it Elex or Alex? I never figured that out.
I mean, what do you want to call it? I call it the Alex, but
Alex. That's what
I'm
I
not
hear most
opposed to
people call
Elex.
it.
I mean, it's a French company, so do your worst.
Okay, so Alex, that was close for me.
Was it?
That was
Yeah.
close. That was close.
It's funny that see. I think we're right here in the mass drop sweet spot, like the drop spot. Like this is where they play, right? Because this is where they start to take $700-800 headphones and bring them down to $400 or $500, and then all of a sudden things that you're like, I'm never going to spend that much on a headphone. You're like, maybe I could spend that much though. It's like it's a very I think that's a very calculated move they make.
Well, and then you're looking at them on drop, and they're like $700, $700, $700, and then Black Friday comes along. I think they're $550, $525 right now, new, which means used market. They're pretty regularly available for $450 on the used market at this point. Maybe even $400 if you're lucky. Yeah, so I think super competitive at that price range, and I think realistically, probably a lot of people's end game. Honestly.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they're pretty legit. I'll talk about the Focals for a minute. So like that's a line I haven't really explored that much. And I really would like to, and I keep meaning to get back to it. There's something that holds me a little bit at arm's length from just falling head over heels in love with the sound signature of the Focal. But I think it's again one of those ones where when I got them and I put them on, I'm like, oh, this is what a luxury headphone sounds like. This is what a super high end headphone sounds like.
Yeah,
like
and feels
all
like
the stuff. Yeah, beautifully made, beautiful packaging, really comfortable, like perfectly comfortable to wear forever. Like that was definitely one where, again, I was sort of jaw on the floor. I was like, wow, this is what headphones are about. Cool.
Yeah.
Now I know.
Are those the ones? I've had several Focals at this point, but are those the ones that it's got like the foam that kind of looks like wall treatment when you open the box, and it's just kind of like, I don't know. There's
it was like
there's like a
layers of
reveal
boxes
to it, you
folding. Yeah,
know?
yeah,
Yeah, it comes apart and there's manuals and sleeves and yeah, they do it right. They do it right when they're
they do, they do.
when they're
And I think at that price point, I was just like, that's a hard headphone to argue with. It's just so damn good.
the
I mean,
bass is phenomenal on
bass
it.
is great, and it's all. I mean, it's just so big. Like you're just sort of the imaging. You're just hearing things here, there, everywhere. Like your brain is like trying to keep up. It's pretty awesome.
And I think it toes the line really well of like being exciting but not being too much.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah,
Like I don't know if that's the way you feel about it, but that's kind of how I felt like the Alex was for me is I was like it's definitely a grab your attention headphone without doing anything, I don't know, novel. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like it doesn't take anything too extreme. It's like
yeah,
it's a long-term excitement type of a headphone
yeah.
as opposed to like you can only listen to it in short bursts because it's, out of control in some areas or
Right. Yeah, it's not fatiguing. It doesn't have like a point to make. It's not like doing some trick to like wow you. Like some headphones, a lot of headphones you'll put on and you'll be like, damn. And then like 30 minutes later, you're like, oh no, I
yeah,
see
you
what they
just
did.
kind of
That's awful.
take a
Yeah,
break or
yeah,
a certain track will come up and just
yeah.
really grate you or what so you said I think you said something about like there's something about the sound that prevents you from diving into like the Focal lineup. Like what I've had 4 different Focals and none of them have made the distance.
Yeah.
So
It's not interesting.
what do you think it is?
I guess for me, my taste goes towards a little bit thicker, warmer, more fluid sound. Like I like stuff to feel, a little bit more organic. And I hate these words; they all sound like so played out, but it's really true for me. It's why tubes often speak to me so much. It's why even if I appreciate the technical performance of a headphone, sometimes it's just going to leave my collection, and why cheaper other stuff will stay because it's just got presence and body, and I just want to spend time with it. And I think that's why the Alexa ultimately moved on, is that even though it wowed me, and even though I couldn't really find any faults in it, I also just never fell in love with it because it didn't have that grace. It was a bit sort of hi-fi, which I often sort of use in a derogatory term, unfortunately. What about
Yeah, I
you?
mean, I couldn't it would be really difficult for me to articulate it, but I kinda have those same feelings about it where maybe it's just I I mean, in the word like, dry is coming to mind, but that's not quite right, because I really don't feel like it's a super dry headphone. I know some people think they kinda have, like, a metallic timbre to them. I don't really think I guess I didn't really feel like it was like that either, but there's definitely something there that just eventually would make me go, I'm ready to try something else."
Yeah.
And maybe it's, what's that called when uncanny valley, right? Where it's like
Right.
you know what I'm talking about? Where
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
something seems so
That's so
real,
close to
but
right.
it's like there's just that one little thing that isn't quite right, so it just kinda, like, creeps you
Yeah.
out a little bit. Not that an Alex creeps me out, but I think same kind of principle where there's just something just ever so slightly off, and it's hard to
Yeah.
pinpoint it, but you know it's there. I don't know.
Yep. I think that's fair. That's fair. Anyway, I'd love to try the Utopia someday because
Yeah.
that apparently on the proper tube amp is supposed to be one of those magical moments in headphoning. So obviously a very expensive magical moment, but something I would love
You
to have
know,
on my ears at some
but
point.
as far as flagships go, though, it's like the lower price of flagship headphones, right? I mean,
Especially this year. I mean, with the things that have
I
come
mean,
out.
it's so as odd as it sounds to say, like $2,000 seems like a bargain. When you compare it to, like, other flagships, it's half the price in a lot of cases,
There you go.
so
There
I
you
don't
go.
know. Um,
That's a second hot tip for the day. Buy only Hifiman and I like
or
yeah,
Utopia.
or Utopia.
So, this is my Hi-Fiman pick, the Edition XX. Now, I would say too, like, the Edition XS has come out, but it's only
Hmm.
available in a very specific, like, from Hi-Fi Go, I think, and I don't know if it's even only in America, or I don't know, I don't quite understand that, but I'm talking about the Edition XX. Um, and so this was maybe, like, what, one of the first big oval Hi-Fi Men, I think, headphones? I'm not really sure, but, they kinda have that one, they've got the Aria, they've got the Ananda, are all kind of that same
HE1K.
HE1K, yeah. So this was kinda just, like, the cheapest one that I found that I was actually willing to pay, um, and then I got it, and I was just kind of blown away because I'd always thought that Hi-Fi Men's were about, like, very clinical, clean, treble, like, sparkle and things like that, and I felt like the Edition XX was, like, kind of the opposite of that, honestly. Like, it was
Yeah.
very thick and warm, textured, it was very easy to listen to. I just it was like a pillow headphone for me, like, you had the big pads, but then it was like the sound also was just it was just good, and it sounded good off of everything too, like, it wasn't difficult to drive by any means, and so that was, like, as weird as it is to think about walking around with, like, one of those big oval Hi-Fi Man headphones, like, I would walk around playing it off of my, like, portable player, and that was the headphone that I would, like, wear around the house,
Yeah.
doing that, and wearing bed and stuff, and so I love that headphone. It's just a huge sound stage on it, and, I mean, maybe not the best imaging in the world, it was definitely more, like, right and left, but it's still made for, like, an interesting listen, and, yeah, it's just a great all-around headphone, so I was kinda blown away by it, and then because of that, I ended up picking up a set of Anandas,
Hmm.
but I didn't like them as much.
Oh, interesting.
I didn't think they had the same amount of character as the Edition XX, um, and I definitely miss, like, the bass, like, maybe not technically on the same level as the Anandas, but just
Yeah.
enjoyment-wise, it was no competition for me.
That I think is again is like the mass drop secret sauce is like
Yeah.
not only do they pull a few $100 out of cost to get things within striking distance, I think they also tune for enjoyment, for pleasure. I think when you're inside a company, right, it's like you're trying to put forth this technology that you're working so hard to develop and you want to like prove how great your technology is. And sometimes you got to get out of your own way. It's like you need an editor, you know. That's why like every great
Mm,
author has a great editor. It's like somebody has to come in and be like, yeah, yeah, guys, I get that it can do that, but no one wants to listen to that. Like
that's
let's
an
just pull this
interest
back, push this up. Ah, doesn't that sound nice? So
That's an interesting way to think about it, like an editor. I like that idea, and I do feel like we all need that, right? I mean, that's why
so
we need second opinions on things, or we need teams of people to, like, talk stuff through, because if one person's making the decision, sometimes it goes down a weird road.
or even
I
two people. Like right
y
now, we
yeah,
clearly need an editor. This
yeah.
video is already way too long. Like somebody
That's
should have cut
true.
us off a long time ago.
That's very true, very true. Um, I just listened to Passion for Sound. You watch that channel?
Hmm.
Um, and I on my drive this weekend, because we went on a trip, he had, like, a four-part interview with one of the Bottlehead, um, owners,
Hmm.
and that was one thing that they talked about, was, like, I think it sounds like it's mostly, like, maybe, like, 3 different people that run that,
Yeah.
company, but it was, like, that they kinda all kept each other in check, and, like, they would all have these ideas that in their heads they all thought were awesome, but then, like, the other 2 people would step in and be like, "Wait a minute,
Chill.
dude. Chill out on that idea a little bit." So,
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting way to think about it.
I gotta check that out. I'm a big Bottlehead fan as well, so I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah, well, I haven't tried anything yet, but after listening to that interview, I'm kinda, like, sold on, I wanna hear something from them.
Yeah, they make some awesome stuff, and using the labor of the the owner assembler to keep the prices reasonable, you get into some pretty high quality gear that would be pretty cost prohibitive otherwise.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like, and it sounds like, I mean, people love it, right? Like,
Oh
people
yeah,
love it. I mean,
yeah.
so, yeah,
Anyway,
I'm I'll have to I'll be I'm keeping an eye out. I'm keeping an eye out, but That's one of the issues for me though, is that like you can't find a good deal on one used.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
because people
even
they keep them or they put their time into building it, so it's like nobody wants to let one go. I don't know.
yeah, it's an
And then
emotional sale for
yeah, it's
sure. If you built
emotional.
that thing from scratch, you're like, I got like 60 hours in this thing. Forget about it.
All
All
right, I
right,
don't have the Alex.
should we go big?
Yeah, the Alex was my runner up for that one, so I'm good to move on.
All right, let's do the big
The
money.
big one, under 1,000.
Oof, it's tough for me. All right, this is I have to look on mine. Well, what you put is on my runner-up list for sure.
Nice. And that's a headphone. So your headphone, that's one that I've seen mentioned, but I don't know much about.
Well, in sort of continuing my thread here of off the beaten track, or at least not quite as safe bet mainstreamy, the LSA. So LSA is a U.S. company. Basically, what these guys do is Underwood Hi-Fi. They work with various manufacturers around the world that they like, that aren't like, it's not like Hifiman, right? They're working with smaller brands, and they're sort of saying, hey, we want to have your product, but I want to like maybe change this thing about it or pull this cost out of it. And so they're kind of putting together their own variations of it. And they make some stuff that's just, purely their brand. So their headphone series is all manufactured by Kennerton, which is a Russian company, which makes some of my favorite headphones, like some amazing big
High-end
Plenars, really high-end stuff, really spendy wood, beautiful,
like
kind of
like 10. When we say high end, right? Like I see them like $10,000 stuff. Like is that
no, like $3,000,
$3,000?
$4,000 would be their like flagship stuff.
Okay.
And then probably the cheapest headphones are like about $1,000. And they do big planar stuff, but they also do a bunch of closed back dynamics, and that's what the HB2 is. They manufactured under the name Gallahorn, and then LSA rebrands it, or Underwood Hi-Fi rebrands it the LSA HP2, and knocks about $300-400 off it, depending how the euro and the dollar are trading, and allows you to buy it from an American company with free shipping, 2 days instead of having to get it shipped over from Russia, which is kind of exciting. But it is, I love all the Kennerton stuff. If people aren't hip to it, definitely go check it out. It's harder to find in the US. Now they do have a dealer out of New York. Was it Audio 46 or 46 Audio, whatever those guys are. You'll see them advertising all the time. Anyway, closed back dynamic headphone. There's a ton of stuff I love in this category that's open back, but this is a headphone that is just super special because it's really easy to drive. It's really lightweight. It's kind of crazy looking. I don't know that you'd really want to wear it around town, but
I can't even think of what it looks like. You keep talking. I'm gonna have to Google it here real fast.
I should have brought them. Do I have them around here? Oh, look at this.
Oh,
there we go. They look like this.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, they're decent looking, but they're just, it's not like a portable headphone, but they're crazy light. They're really easy to drive, and they're like, the architecture is dynamic drive horn loaded. So they basically they present this way that's incredibly sweet and very like disarming and very like intimate, but also has a lot of space and separation and very interesting twinkly bits and texture and everything. So you kind of get a couple of headphones in one, and it's really unique. It's like, I haven't heard, like typically you hear stuff that's like kind of got a big stage and it's wide and it's fun, or you hear stuff and it's like really intimate and inside your head and you're like, oh, that's really cool. There's kind of both at the same time, which took my brain a minute to adjust to, but once I did,
they're closed back.
And they're closed back. Yep. Which makes them super unique as well. So it's like this and Chord Mojo, and like that could pretty much be it for me.
I love the Mojo. Mojo is, I think, we'll have to save that for the amp version of this, but I like that one too.
Yeah. But yeah, I had the HE6s on the short list for sure. And honestly, sometimes they go on sale to the point where they're almost in the under $500 category. But why did you put them on there?
Yeah, well, so this is, I mean, this is kind of my favorite headphone at at this point in time. I told you I'm going to sound like a Hi-Fi Man fanboy by the end of this, but um, yeah, I don't know. I got it, and I wasn't, like I said, I got it because I like the 560 so much. And initially, I wasn't really impressed. I tried it on like the Lake People G111 and the Jotunheim 2, and I just didn't it didn't do it for me, and I was kinda like, "Eh, you know, it's okay, but it's not, is it better than the 560? Do I like it better than the 560?" I didn't really feel that, but then I was playing around with DACs in my amp, and I got the Singzer, and I got my Bifrost 2, and just that chain of Bifrost 2, Singzer, HE6 made me just kinda stop, and, like, as soon as I had that chain set up and listened to the HE6, I got it, like, instantly. And I was like, "Wow, this thing is resolving, like, more than anything I've ever heard." You know, and I feel like it's less about when, I don't know how you, like, maybe this is a weird way to think about it, but I feel like a super highly resolving headphone like that, it's almost more about, like, this, that how it, like, begins and ends and the space between, like, notes, and
Hmm.
how, like, the mute, like, the dynamics of it kind of fade in and out, like, really just shows how much it's resolving, whereas less resolving things, like, it's not that the music sounds, like, wildly different or anything, but you miss, like, a lot of those little nuances of the sounds coming in and out and fading into one another, and, and all that happening while it's separated, right? And you can pick out those little details, like, for the different instruments and things,
Yeah.
and I don't know, it just, it makes me stop what I'm doing and
Yeah.
listen, you know? I can't do anything else but listen to it. Like, if I'm, you know, I'll try to be doing something, and I'll put on music in the background, I'll have it on, and then I'll just find myself just, like, just sitting there going, "Oh, yeah," and then I'll be like, "Oh, wait, what was I supposed to be doing?"
And no, I think that's a
It
perfect description. It's like one of those interrupter headphones. It's an eyes closed headphone. It's not an eyes open headphone. It's like it's not for background music while you're working because it will always steal your attention back. It is so demanding and insistent about making itself known to you and its presence. I feel like it's a very impactful headphone when like driven properly. It's like some points almost fatiguing to me, but it's like that thing just has slam like few headphones I've
this
encountered.
specifically, I feel like the sub bass for me was what was, like, really impressive. Like, I feel like the focals and stuff, like, they slam pretty hard, but they don't have the extension, you know, that the
Hmm.
HE6 has. And, like, I feel like it's the first headphone that I've listened to that, like, really does sub bass well, to the point where I'm like, "Oh, like, now I see why people, like, are concerned about sub bass." Whereas before I was like, "Ah, sub bass, like, what," you know? But
Get a
it really
subwoofer.
does add a totally different dimension to the music to have, like, that sub bass that's kinda, like, fill in, you
Yeah,
know, the sound, and, but without, like, muddying everything up, though, you know?
yeah,
So it's just special. I just feel like it's really special. I It is kind of a dangerous headphone, though, I feel, because, right, there are so many people out there saying, "Well, you need this amp or you need this," and it's kinda like, now in my head, I'm going, "Well, what amp do I need to try with this thing at this point?" Like, now I have to buy a speaker amp to drive these headphones, like,
that's the funny reason. That's like exactly why it didn't make it to the top of my list for this category was that it's like giving somebody debt. It's like, sure, it's a in theory $1,800 headphone that you can often buy for 600 bucks, but really I've just given you debt because now you really are going to want
yeah.
a many $100, if not close to $1,000, like amp setup to like bring the full
Well
value of it. And then like, is it a bargain anymore at that point?
well, right, and it's like, the problem with that too is that it's like, I'd just be buying the amp for that one headphone.
Yeah,
You know, it's like I'd buy it, and it wouldn't be an amp that I need or use with, like, anything else. It would just be for that one.
yeah.
But maybe it's worth
And
it. I don't know. There's a lot of people out there that say it is.
well, I know we talked about maybe doing a conversation on just how you build a system, and that's the difference of if you want to have a bunch of headphones or if you want to have one setup. You know, are you
Yeah.
going all in? Are you dialing in? Are you leaving it
Mm.
broad, wide, narrow?
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I called the HE6 SEV2 sort of like the baby Sesfara in my review, because the characteristics that it shares with that headphone are many, at, you know, a fraction of the price.
Right.
So I feel like if you want to hear pretty legit stuff and you're not ready to spend many thousands of dollars, which no one should be, honestly, it's a very special headphone. So I'm with you. It's on my list too. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the other problem too, is now I want to try a Susvara, but that one's
Well,
gonna
then
have
you
to
need
wait. That's gonna have to
amp
wait
for
a little
that.
bit. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Runner-ups. This is I don't have a ton of experience in this category, so I mean I have one other on hand right now, which is the Aeolus, which I'm loving. I think it's probably an easy recommendation in this category, because it sounds great on everything and it does a lot of things really, really well. I don't feel like it grips me quite as much as the HE6 does, with the setup that I've got at my desk, but I can listen to the Aeolus on my X-Can in my while I'm laying in bed, and it sounds really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going used prices, I think there's a lot of stuff to look at, right? That starts to fall under that $1,000 mark, like all the ZMF stuff, or like all the bottom half of ZMF's range, like the Icon and the Aeolus and the Atticus and all that stuff that's in the like 1,500 and under price range. Usually on the used market's more in that $800 to $900 sweet spot. And I think at those prices, all those headphones are super interesting, and offer like that high-end experience, both in terms of kind of the build and the beauty, but also the sound on all those headphones I really enjoy, and it's sort of pick your flavor at that point. So yeah, I'd throw that stuff in the mix. Some of the higher end Beyerdynamic stuff is kind of interesting. Obviously the Hifiman, that's got a lot of stuff kind of in that, you know, the Anandas. I like the Anandas actually quite a bit. The Arayas, like those used, start to fall into that price range. Yeah, there's the LSA had HV1, which was like $1,400 new, which is based off of the Kennerton Tech, which is like a $2,500 headphone. Those things used, if you can get one for around $1,000, that is like one of my all-time favorite headphones. Just awesome. You can.
Is that one open or closed? Is that
open planar? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Metal grill, wood cups, good looking headphone, and just really hits that sweet spot for me of having some warmth and fluidity while still having tons of technical prowess and just being a badass. So
awesome. Well, I don't know, man. How do we close this out? I mean, we did our list. We got
it. Is this the holiday shopping list?
We did. Yeah. Good luck.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays. I think too. I don't know if I'd recommend really anybody like as cool, as awesome as like a gift as the right headphone would be. I'd be pretty hesitant to buy a headphone for somebody. I don't know how you feel about that, but like
that's very personal,
especially somebody that's like, maybe if you're just getting somebody started, you know, something in the $100 to $200 range is maybe like a great gift. But if they're already into headphones and have several, I don't know how you'd buy one for somebody like just out of the blue. So I don't know how useful any of this is to anybody, but I was curious to have the conversation.
I say that about my channel all the time. I don't know how useful this is for anybody. Yeah, no, it's fun. Lists are always fun. I think hopefully if you're into headphones and you're sort of climbing around on the price tier, trying to figure out what your sweet spot is, what you can afford, what you're comfortable spending on this hobby. Hopefully we've sort of opened up a few ideas, things that you've either heard of before and now we're just sort of underlining, or things that are new that you're going to go do a little research on and see if they might be a good fit.
I mean, a couple of things that I found interesting is just neither of us picked the same thing, which I thought maybe, I mean, we were close on a couple of them perhaps, but I don't feel like either outside of the Alex, which is just going to be a solid pick from anybody, I think, in that price range. I feel like most of the stuff is not maybe like the mainstream suggestion that people would give.
Yeah.
So so hopefully it maybe made you think a little bit more about like possibilities, right?
Yeah.
Not everybody's gonna want like a 6XX or a Sundara. So it's all preference, right?
So for the 6 people who don't want the 6XX or Sundara,
Well, I'm one
hopefully
of them.
we provided it.
So I'm starting a support group. So
yeah. So not a mainstream taste. Yeah, for sure. No, I love the wacky stuff. Not, I mean, a lot of this stuff's pretty mainstream that we said, but I love the wacky stuff. I like to get out there and encourage people to try different brands and go check out our video on buying and selling used stuff, because it's a safer way to play, and you can try more of these things and figure out your own taste. And but yeah, I mean, I think
we got it.
I think we got it.
Awesome.
We got something.
Well, I appreciate it again. I enjoy doing these conversations. So
yeah,
we got some topics for the future, right? Building a system, amps, right?
Ranting about reviewers, all that stuff. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So we'll probably be back again. Thanks for anybody that's been sticking with us here. Appreciate it. And comments, questions, all that stuff down below. And
yeah, if you've got a under 100, under 200, under 300, under 500, under $1,000 pick.
Yeah, throw them out
we
there.
Missed. Throw them out there. People love to read. I love to read comments on videos like this to see like what the crowd thought. So do it.
And for sure, jump over to Sine Craft's channel too and check out his stuff going on over there. Right, lots of great reviews. What's your latest that you've done?
I just did one on older balanced amps that I love. So I was looking at the
that was
Nbr.
That was interesting. Yeah.
It's like, I think we get a little, I mean, broken record here, but it's like our group here, we get a little too in love with the newest, hottest, cutest thing, and there's a lot of great audio gear out there that is, especially I feel like amps like just depreciate so fast, and people just like, if it's not the latest thing, who cares? But there's some real choice stuff out there. So yeah, just pulling a couple of my favorites forward to make that point.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we'll definitely, like we said, amps could be a whole video on their own. DACs could be a whole video on their own. So plenty more to talk about in the future.
All right.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Cut
and scene.